welcome to First Bite, our Detroit Lions preview podcast where we're previewing the offseason, and really, we're into it. The offseason is underway. The general manager search is starting to heat up across the NFL, and we want to get into it. We've been profiling candidates all offseason, and we want to get to one of the most popular candidates this week. Ed Dodds is the topic at hand. Lions expressed some interest in him earlier in the week, so we're going to talk to him. But before, let's get some introductions out of the way. I'm Jeremy Reisman. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Pride Detroit First Bite podcast. With me, as always, is Ryan Matthews. Ryan, how we doing?
I'm doing well. Things are moving at quite a brisk pace, aren't they?
Yes, and we're at a point where I'm almost concerned by the time this is recorded. It might be out of date, but we'll see. But I did want to get Ed Dodds in because he's such a popular candidate, the current assistant general manager over at the Indianapolis Colts. So we got a Dodds expert, if there is such a thing that exists, because as we were talking off air, not exactly a public figure, so to speak, over there at Indy. Zach Keefer over at The Athletic had an opportunity to talk to me. As a fantastic profile him over on The Athletic. If you haven't read it yet, please go and do that. He joins us today. Thanks for your time, Zach.
Thanks for having me.
I'm very excited about this interview. I know a lot of Lions fans are too. I think a lot of people look at Dodds and they see the accomplishments, right? He's been with Seattle. We know what Seattle's done. We've seen what Indy's been able to do in a short period of time. But your profile on him talks a lot about the person himself, and that I think might be just as exciting based on some of the things he said to you. So can we start there? Tell me about who he is as a person based on some conversations you've had with him.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of Lions fans, and I feel the anticipation and the excitement up in Detroit about the possibility of this guy taking over the Lions organization. I haven't talked to Ed in a couple of days. The last I heard from him was when he backed out of the Carolina Panthers job. Not to say he was going to get an offer, but he had interviewed with them. So second time that's happened in 2 years. He backed out of the Cleveland Browns job last year. So he's getting a lot of interest. And he's a fascinating guy. I mean, he is a scout to his core. And he's regarded around the league as one of the best talent evaluators in football. And he's a little dynamic in the fact that he's worked with two of the best in the league. Not only Chris Ballard right now, but he worked right next to John Schneider for a long time in Seattle, helped build that team into what they became. And it was really hard for him to leave. He's not a guy that's looking for the next step necessarily. And he's not a guy that's just going to take the first offer that comes his way. I remember talking to him for a long time a couple of summers ago, and he's like, look, my dad was a financial investment analysis guy. He told me to save my money. Scouts don't make a lot of money when they start. He saved a lot of it. He's making good money now. He's not going to just take a job for money. He's learned from Schneider and Ballard that you don't just take the first job. It's all about fit. It's all about the system and the program you can build. And I think that's going to be really important. Whatever job he ends up taking, whether it's Detroit or somewhere else, it's going to be a place where he feels like he can stay for a long time and win at a high level, because this guy does not like to lose. There's a clip from the Senior Bowl. All the Colts scouts are in a room. This is after they had beaten the Texans in the wild card game in 2018 and lost to the Chiefs the next week in the divisional round. And he basically just dishes out some humility to these guys. And he basically says, like, look, we haven't done anything. And he didn't say the word anything. He said a little bit more than that. That's who this guy is. He is fiery. He will call you out. He will not put up with BS. And people around the league really have come to see him as a rising star in the personnel department.
Yeah, Zach, thanks again for being on the podcast. Really appreciate it. Also in that Athletic article that you wrote, which I highly encourage all Lions fans to go take a look at it. You mentioned that Dodds' fingerprints are kind of all over Indy's staggering turnaround, as you mentioned. Can you go into further detail on what exactly you mean by that? Maybe some of the nitty gritty details as to like what exactly those fingerprints are on in Indianapolis?
Yeah, good question. Do you guys know about Kenny Moore? So Kenny is a undersized cornerback who played at a small college, was undrafted, was cut by the Patriots as a rookie, and cut down day in 2017. Ballard will not listen to the argument to bring him in. He has a rule: cornerbacks must be 5'10" or taller. That's just how he lives as a GM. And Dodd says, look, this guy's 5'9", he plays bigger. This argument went into midnight. And they're like, Ballard's finally like, fine, put on the tape. So Dodds pushed really hard for this guy. This guy's a borderline Pro Bowler right now, and he signed one of the biggest slot corner deals in the league a couple of years ago. I mean, he's one of the staples of the Colts defense. That's an example of his scouting. He was really big on getting Danico Autry in town, who was one of the best contracts the Colts have signed in the last couple of years because they got him at such a good rate compared to what you pay starters in the defensive line. So the thing about Indy is it's not all Ballard. It's not only his decisions to go get DeForest Buckner or whatever. Dodds is right there, and he's a huge, huge piece to the puzzle in Indy. And I know Indy hasn't gone far in the playoffs like a lot of the teams, but they're building something the right way, and I think the Lions have noticed that. I think a lot of teams around the league have noticed how much the Colts have turned over the roster in the last couple of years and how many really good draft picks and really good free agent signings they made. They haven't signed a bad contract. I mean, they really haven't. Dodds is 1A in that department. Those are just a couple examples, but Ballard gets a lot of credit, and he's really good, but Dodds is right there. Would be a huge loss for Indy.
Yeah, and I think you brought up an interesting point, too, that he's kind of grown up with two of the most respected GMs in the league today, or, mine. And Schneider obviously was potentially even on the Lions' radar, so the fact that they're also tapping Dodds shouldn't come as much of a surprise. When it comes to, his philosophy around the kind of players that he wants to add, is there any limitations that he has? It sounds to me like, there isn't necessarily those physical limitations. Does he like guys with speed? Does he have character as high on his board? Are there any things in terms of pattern that you've seen, whether it's, Ballard or Dodds in Indianapolis, that's really helped them build the roster that they have today?
That's a really good question. They've had to do so much that I haven't been able to pick out a particular pattern. I mean, we know what Ballard likes. He likes big corners, like I just mentioned. He's obsessed with the O-line and D-line, like obsessed with it. I don't think Dodds, would be any different in that regard. There's no shortcuts in that realm. That's a fascinating question. We haven't, I've had conversations with him about players, but it was more to the specific player in that situation. But remember who he grew up in the league with. Before Ballard and before John Schneider, I mean, he would go lift weights with Al Davis in Oakland. And Al Davis didn't talk to a lot of people and didn't let a lot of people in the weight room when he was working out. But he liked this kid. Ed Dodds grew up in Kingsville, small college town, worked his way up. He still limps around on the practice field sometimes because he's got this old football injury, and he hurt it again playing pickup basketball. And I saw him on the practice field in training camp. I said, you look like a 40-year-old cornerback who's still, just getting out of the league. And he's an intense guy, and he doesn't hold back. And you saw that in that video. But I think part of him is really excited to get the chance to run the show. He's watched two really good ones do it. But if you're going to work for Ed Dodds, you're going to have thick skin. Believe me on that. I've talked to a lot of the Colts scouts, a lot of the Colts personnel people, and they do not hold back in that room. And if you like a guy, you better tell them why you like the guy, and you better be able to back it up because Dodds will pick you apart. And that's one of the things that have jumped out about him the last couple of years.
Well, speaking about things that kind of jump out, one other piece of the article that really jumps out to me is, when Dodds himself kind of reaches this crossroads, right? He's deciding whether or not he wants to stay with Seattle. He's going to fly out to Indianapolis and interview to be the assistant GM with Ballard, and he kind of has these second thoughts, right? Like the building's not very impressive. You mentioned that Dodds, the roster needs a lot of work. That place has a ways to go. Like that sounds a lot like Detroit. Like it really does. So, I mean, do you get the sense that Ed is ready to just kind of like make that step this offseason to finally become a GM? Or do you think that, if something doesn't end up, striking him the right way, that he's totally ready to kind of wait for the right opportunity?
I think he's totally fine coming back to the Colts. I think there's part of him that wants to finish this and maybe win a Super Bowl, but they haven't, like he said in the video, they haven't done anything, right? They won a playoff game. And they're still licking their wounds from blowing the game in Buffalo on Saturday. So I think there is a patience to him that says, I don't want to just leave Indy before we get anything done that really matters to me. But, and this is me speculating here, this is not from him. It's going to be important what the Lions present him with in terms of how he's going to be able to run the team. because I know for a fact that Ballard turned down jobs because they weren't going to let him do it the way he wanted. And by that, I mean, he was like, look, this roster is crap and I need time. And if you don't give me time, I can't do this right. And they said, I don't know. And he said, okay, see ya. So Dodds is the same way, and he's going to need time. And I don't, you guys know the Lions a lot more than I do, but doesn't it seem like they need, whatever they do, they need to fix this. They need to fix the whole dang thing. And they might need a guy to step in to really change that. He might be the guy, he might not be. But the sense I've gotten is it's going to be very important for him to hear what he wants to hear on the other side. Because it's easy to sell a candidate during an interview, but what are you going to be like after they go 6-10 in year one? And he wants to stick to the plan. And I'm just making this up. Ownership wants him to go spend some money in free agency. He's not a Band-Aid guy. And I don't think that's the way to do it. I don't think that's the way he's going to do it. You've seen how Seattle drafted and how they built that team. Unbelievable run of draft picks. Yep. The Colts have had a really good run as well. They've missed on some guys. But overall, I mean, you draft 2 All-Pros in the first round in 2018, and that's how it's gone so far. So that's going to be a huge element to this. Is he's going to want to hear from them that he's going to be able to do it his way because he thinks his way will work. He's got the credentials to prove it. I don't know what the Lions will tell him. I don't know what he has to hear specifically, but don't forget that part of the equation as well.
That's super interesting because, you know, Lions team president Rod Wood said in his press conference last week, you know, he doesn't necessarily see a full rebuild necessary, and they might be looking for a quicker fix, which might mean it's not necessarily a good fit. But I mean, that also might just be something you're saying publicly, because you don't want to say like we're in a full 3-4 year rebuild because now you've screwed the next general manager in terms of bringing any free agents in or anything like that. But I wonder if you also have any insight as to why Dodds backed out of the Panthers job, and if you don't have any sources, that's cool too. But it's always kind of interesting to hear why those things fall apart.
Yeah, I can pull up the quote he gave me. It's not particularly revelatory. I don't have any insight besides speculation. Sure. He said he had a really good conversation with them. It was a really smart owner. I know he loves Matt Rule, and I know Ballard does as well. So I don't think that was the issue. So anything I said would be pure speculation. I just don't want to. He chose not to. We'll see, but he's going to keep getting these interviews until he takes one of these jobs. Believe me.
The last thing I had, I wanted to talk a little bit about the connections he has with certain head coaches. The first one I want to talk about is Dan Campbell because he seems to be a guy that might be gaining some steam for this Lions head coaching job. Dan Campbell obviously interviewed for that Colts job a couple of years back. Was Dodds involved in that process at all, and does he know Dan Campbell? Do you know?
Oh yeah, I would assume so. And remember, after the Josh McDaniels fiasco, they only interviewed 3 guys after that, and it was always going to be Frank Reich, and that was clear. But it was Leslie Frazier, and it was also Dan Campbell. So that tells you something. The Colts almost, I mean, they were pretty serious with Mike Vrabel for a minute as well. Now he's down in Tennessee and they go back and forth with them. But I could see that happening. And it's such a weird dynamic. Like, I'm kind of anxious for your guys' thoughts. Like, how is a team going to hire one and then the other? And who knows who they're going to hire first? And how much say does one get about the other? That's weird. And I know a lot of teams are doing that right now.
Yeah.
That's a lot on the Lions' plate. And look, I've covered a team where the GM and the coach do not get along. Like, it did not work with Chuck Pagano and Ryan Gierson. It was bad. And you can't win like that. You cannot sustain winning like that. So I'm not saying that's going to happen in Detroit, but I'm sure that's a concern that Ed Dodds has, right? Like, sure. Who are you going to hire for coach, and what do I think about him? And do I get any say in that? Isn't that pertinent here?
Oh yeah, it's the chicken before the egg conundrum. Absolutely, 100%. It's a really interesting place for them to be in, and I think the other interesting nugget to pull from this is that Darrell Bevell is already in house. So how much does, Ed Dodds' familiarity with a guy like Darrell Bevell from the Seattle days, how much of that is a level of comfortability that you can bring a GM in who already knows who the head coach is going to be, has a, established rapport with him. I think that's why Darrell Bevell has, really gained steam as not just being the guy who is the intern, but could be the solution. Because a GM is, somebody's got to buy the groceries, and that's a really important job. So
I will say this, and this is Ballard. Now, I know a lot more about Ballard than Dodds, but, when Ballard interviewed, he had this huge binder. And, part of it was, here's how the coach and the GM work together. And that was a big selling point for Irsay, obviously, because of what he had just experienced with. I mean, he literally sent these guys to therapy together, Grigson and Pagano. So it was bad. And now he's got it with literally a seamless relationship with Frank Reich and Chris Ballard. That's how it's supposed to look like. And we've seen it with a couple other places. And another place is Schneider and Pete Carroll.
Sure.
I mean, those guys really get along. It's been a long time. That's important for Dodds. And I wonder how that will play into this, because there's all these interviews that the Lions are having right now, a bunch of different names coming out about who they're talking with. It'll be fascinating. But I know that if I'm a GM and I'm going to take a job, I got to know that I got some say in the head coach. You have to. Otherwise, it's going to deteriorate, whether it's next month or in 2 years. You got to have that trust, and that's so huge. So that's a really fine line the Lions are walking right now, like a lot of teams are.
Yeah. And obviously the other big name out there that has a connection to both Dodds and the Lions is Robert Saleh. Their days in Seattle, obviously connected to. The Lions are kind of in an interesting spot, though, regarding all of that, because they've done both, right? They had the connected GM and head coach in Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn, and it didn't work out. Those guys were
right.
They were together, but they were headed in the wrong direction. And then right before that, they still had Bob Quinn and Jim Caldwell, and that didn't work out. So the Lions have to know, I would imagine at this point, that there has to be like some sort of equal, some sort of middle ground there. And what they seem to be saying is they want a general manager and a head coach that can essentially work with anybody. But I think you're onto something there, though, that there has to be at least some sort of basis of comfort there. And
they have.
Go ahead.
Do you guys have any last thing before I get out of here? Do you guys have any sense that they're leaning offense or defense with the hire?
Honestly, no.
Okay.
I mean, it would make more sense, I think, it depends. A lot of people say you want to get the next offensive bright mind, right? But at the same time, Lions finished with one of the worst defenses, if not the worst defense.
I saw it. The Colts had no problem scoring on them, whatever.
Right.
Game.
Exactly. But they've actually been pretty balanced with their interviews, just kind of looking.
I mean, you hire the best guy. And if
exactly.
Salah's the best guy, you hire him, and I think that'd be a huge win, because he seems like he's terrific in a lot of ways. But it'll be fascinating. It'll be fascinating what they decide to do with Stafford as well. But I would be surprised if he goes anywhere. He's too good.
I'm thinking the same, and obviously that's something that's definitely coming up in some of these GM interviews, I would imagine. But before we get out of here, Zach, let me give you the opportunity to promote your stuff here. Where can the people find you? And if there's anything maybe Lions fans specifically will be interested, let us know.
Yeah, I'm at just Z Keefer on Twitter. Super easy to find me. I'm at The Athletic. And I think that the tables are turned. I mean, I think my interest moving forward is what the Lions do, and then what they do with their quarterback, because I don't think it's going to happen. But gun to my head right now, I think he might be their best option if the Colts can make some magical trade happen. I mean, Dak's not going to be available. Deshaun Watson's not getting traded in the division. I don't like Carson Wentz. And I know Lions fans would be heartbroken if he left, but I think Stafford could step in and be a stud in Indy. I mean, with this coaching staff and this line, and I don't mean to get you guys down, but
we're Lions fans.
We'll see.
That's where
it
we
is
live.
The first thing he's going to do as GM is not going to be trade away the all-time leading passer. So we'll see.
Hey, that's good information right there. Zach, thanks for joining us. I appreciate your time. When we come back, we're going to break everything down, talk about some of the latest Lions GM news, and give our own thoughts. So again, Zach, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys after the break.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Zach, you're free to go. Thanks again. Appreciate it. Oh, he's gone. Never mind.
He gone.
He gone.
A lot of good nuggets though in there.
Oh yeah, that's and we'll talk about it once we get back into it. But
I guess my question is right now: had the Lions hired a GM?
They haven't yet. No, we're still in the clear here.
All right, cool.
Actually, and I don't think we had a long enough pause there, so I'm gonna just an editing point here. Give a couple seconds of silence here. Okay, that should be good enough. I need to catch up on alerts. I actually had them turned off by accident, so apologies to the people that subbed. We had Sancho Panza with the Twitch Prime right now. Appreciate that. Who else? Big Al with the 5-month streak. Appreciate that as well. And catch up on some questions here as well. Moon King, who are the head coaches the Lions want to interview again? Are there any? We haven't heard of any second round interviews for head coaches yet, have we? I don't believe so. I think because they're still doing, like, Todd Bowles is interviewing on Friday, and that'll be his first. So I imagine they'll probably get that one done before they start talking about bringing back guys. So right now it does seem like they're zeroing in on their GM search. We'll talk a little bit about that news right after this break here. And then next week might be where they really kind of narrow down their head coach search as well.
It almost seems like their GM search is kind of narrowing down to, like, well, what would you say, like 3 or 4 names?
I would say 4. I think we're down to 4. There's the Colbert stuff with Colbert stuff. I can't look at that name and not say Colbert, but it's Colbert.
I know.
We'll talk about that on the other end. Spoiler, I do think that's dead. I do think there's not much to it. The only reason we ran with it prior to Detroit was because Burkett threw a little bit of smoke into that equation, but he's been pretty quiet since basically everyone has shut it down. So, yeah. So that's where I think things are currently at with him. Like I said, we'll get into it in a little bit.
Yeah, but you would say the 4 names would be Brad Holmes, Ed Dodds,
and the Saints boys.
Yeah, Jeff Ireland.
And Fontana.
Yeah.
Yep. Those are where the rumors are headed.
Right, and I was going to say, and which interestingly enough, was it who? There's just so many names and so many teams that are just, like, wrecking my brain right now. But there was some other organization that had 4 finalists, and none of them overlapped
Panthers.
with the Lions.
Yeah, that was the Panthers. Yeah, they had a bunch of weird names that really no one has been interviewing. It's kind of interesting.
Other than one hot one at the beginning of the offseason was Peters, just because there was that thought process that maybe there'd be a connection to Saleh.
Right.
Being from the 49ers organization. But really interesting that it seems like the Lions are going to get the guy that they want to get, most likely.
The only guys that could be considered the guys that get away is, we'll see what happens with the Jets and Saleh. Again, it doesn't. There hasn't been a lot of buzz there between the Lions since their interview, and whether that report about the interview not going as well as planned is true or not, it does kind of seem like that hype has died down quite a bit. And then obviously George Paton getting the Panthers, the Broncos job.
Yeah, we called it though. He has that nephew who's in scouting.
He does. Gun to your head, who's the favorite? Based on the way things seem to be currently leading, it seems like Brad Holmes and Campbell, right? Like those are the two names with the most momentum, if I can use a term that I hate. I feel, and I don't know if, as far as I know, those two don't have a connection necessarily. So, going back to what Zach said, there might be some things to clear up there. But I think what I've basically gotten out of the Lions GM and head coaching search right now is that we better get a Saints guy on here pretty soon.
Yeah, that's the next step, right?
Because we have 3 candidates between the GM and head coach that all hail from the Saints, and maybe that's the team that the Lions are trying to emulate. And I know a lot of people are saying, just build your own thing, but everyone's got connections somewhere, so whatever. Or Saints girl, I'm sorry. Did I say Saints guy? My apologies. But yes, that is next on the docket. Hopefully we can get one in before decisions are made so that we can talk really about everybody, Ireland, Fontana, and Campbell. But like I said, we'll get into it. You ready to jump back into it? We can just knock this out so we don't miss out on any news.
And so that we can get this as published as soon as possible.
Yeah, exactly. We'll do that. All right. Give us a second, chat. We'll get right back into it. Thanks for joining us. We have almost 100 viewers in the middle of Wednesday afternoon? I lose track of days when it's not mid-season.
Middle of the week, middle of the day, 100 people showing up.
Appreciate y'all. Actually, between Twitch and YouTube, we're well over 100. I keep leaving y'all out, YouTube. I'm sorry, but we're growing over there. We got 60, 70 viewers over there, about 80 over on Twitch. Y'all are great. And we are back on First Bite. I want to thank again Zach Keefer for joining us, talking about Ed Dodds. Before we get into some of the news, let's just kind of react to what he had to say about Dodds, because another really fascinating interview. I see the hype around Dodds that a lot of people see. Although I have to say, I came away thinking I'm not sure he's the best fit. Did you get that feeling from him as well?
I think I got that same vibe even just from reading the Athletic piece, and that's why I wanted to bring that up to Zach himself. But and I'll reiterate it for either people who are kind of jumping in late. But I asked Zach about the crossroads that Dodds was at when he was in Seattle, when he was working under John Schneider, but he had this opportunity to go out to Indianapolis. Keefer's article over at the Athletic mentioned, Dodds had mulled his options on the flight back to Seattle, and he had, these thoughts that the building's not very impressive, the roster needs a lot of work, the place has a ways to go. Like that's really describing the Detroit Lions right now. Like their defense has to be completely overhauled. Their offense is in a state of flux. They need wide receivers. Don't know what necessarily is going to happen with Matthew Stafford this offseason. It seems like a franchise in crisis. And from everything that Zach laid out about Dodds as a candidate, having a dad who is a financial analysis, and if he's running that algorithm and seeing whether or not the Lions are a good fit for him, I don't know if they're a great fit for him either, Jeremy.
Right. Yeah. I mean, especially when he said he wants to go somewhere where he's sure he can build a winner. I mean, how can you be sure about that in Detroit? No offense. And like I kind of said during their interview, the sense I get from Detroit is that they might want to not go full rebuild. They might want to, try with Matthew Stafford and just, kind of, I don't know, chop away at the defense, which obviously needs a whole bunch of work. And maybe that's not what Ed Dodd wants. Maybe he wants to rebuild everything, rebuild the practice facility. I mean, go through basically everything again that we saw with Bob Quinn. And I think the Lions are probably averse to doing all that again because they just tried it and it didn't work. But again, we'll see. I'm definitely still impressed with the guy's resume. I definitely think he's a guy that the Lions should seriously consider and stay out of his way. I don't know if that's what they're actually going to do, but we'll see. It does appear, and we'll get into the news part of it now, that Ed Dodds is amongst the people, according to Albert Breer, that the Lions want to bring back for a second interview. The other guys being Terry Fontana from the Saints, Jeff Ireland from the Saints. One of them was, I think, the guy who the Broncos ended up hiring in George Payton. And then who am I missing? Ed Dodds and
Brad Holmes.
And Brad Holmes, the supposed leader in the clubhouse, according to Adam Schefter. The one person who has not been mentioned by anyone essentially outside of 97.1 and a little bit with Dave Burkett is the current and probably still Steelers general manager Kevin Colbert, who there was a wild rumor that the Lions had an offer on the table on Wednesday morning. A source from the Steelers department essentially said there hasn't even been a requested interview from the Lions on Colbert's, and they won't be allowed to talk to him, otherwise it's tampering because Colbert is still under contract. So that one appears to be dead for now. There has been rumors basically since the beginning that the Lions are interested, and so maybe that changes. But for now, I would say we're down to those 4 general manager candidates, Ryan, and let me leave it to you. Who amongst that is someone that you're circling right now? If you had to maybe rank them, or if there's 2 guys you want, 2 guys you don't, where do you stand on those 4 guys right now?
Yeah, so I mean, I wrote an article even before the season was over, December 5th, about potential general manager candidates. 2 of those guys were on my list. Ed Dodds, who I think we can all agree that his resume is maybe the most impressive. I mean, if you really read up on what he did in Seattle, even take what Zach just said about his relationship that he developed with Al Davis for somebody who was very private and kept things close to the chest as Al Davis, to let Ed Dodds in as kind of just he was like a coffee runner at that point. I think that speaks volumes to Ed Dodds as a football mind. And then, like I said, look at what he did in Seattle, look at what he's been able to do in Indianapolis, all very impressive things. And then the other name was Terry Fontana, sorry. he was another impressive resume in terms of what he's done with as the director of pro scouting over with the New Orleans Saints. Those two names stick out to me. Brad Holmes, I've kind of soured on a little bit.
Okay.
For reasons that we might get into. I don't know a ton about Jeff Ireland, just being very honest with you.
Yeah.
There's just so many names to research and so much to do in kind of like such a, limited amount of time. But I think that I would want, if the Lions are ready to commit to a rebuild, I think I want Ed Dodds to be that guy.
That's
personally.
Fair. Yeah, and I think he's still definitely up there on my list. But let's get into Brad Holmes a little bit, because ever since our conversation with Vinny Bonsignor, which I thought was one of the best of one of these that we've done, I've been fully on board. I think he's done a phenomenal job over there. He talked, and if you haven't listened to that podcast, please go back and listen to that as well. I know we're giving you guys a lot of homework, but hey, do it. If you're interested enough to listen to me yak on, you should listen to some people that are a lot smarter than me talk about some of these candidates. But he talked about, how he believed in his staff, how, if a lower level scout came to him and said, we need to get this guy, let's go get this guy. And all you have to do is, I think maybe one of the most poignant points he made was when he said, the general perception was the Rams traded away all these first-round picks for Jalen Ramsey and traded up to get Jared Goff. They were selling out the future for the present. He saw it an entirely different way. He saw it like, no, they weren't doing that. They just had that much faith in their director of college scouting to get guys in the second and third and fourth round that can become full-time starters. And guess what? That bet paid off. It's a couple years later. This team is still in the playoffs. This team is still contending, and they're starting a bunch of second and third and fourth round picks on their defense, on their offense, and they still look like a dominant team. And yes, a lot of that credit goes to the coaching staff, but the reason the coaching staff, put the team and the general manager put the team in that situation is because they believed in their college scouting department, and that's Brad Holmes. That's him.
Yeah, I will, and I'm right there with you, Jeremy, in terms of his ability to draft. Again, not being the general manager, we don't know what final say he had on anything, right? Sure. Like, I mean, we can point to certain picks and say, Greg Robinson was a huge stinker. We can say, Jared Goff, I mean, he's experienced some success, but he's also experienced, sunrises and sunsets that that we can get into. Yeah. But he's, I mean, like you talk about those mid-round picks, Cooper Kupp, Johnson III from Boston, Boston College. Yeah. I mean, the ability to move on from Alec Ogletree because they had Corey Littleton,
mm-hmm. You look back at that 2017 draft, look it up right now. If you're listening, it's fantastic. Another homework thing, go look it up. It's amazing. It's a great draft class.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, this seems to be one of those scenarios in which we can't really parse through what he's necessarily responsible for and what he's not responsible for. But the one interesting, I keep using the word interesting, but the thing that has me most interested is why have the Lions not expressed any interest in Brandon Staley?
Well, I'm a huge Brandon Staley fan. I've been standing for him for the past month. Huge fan.
But it's just interesting that Brad Holmes is one of your finalists for your general manager job, and there's nothing coming across any news desk about Brandon Staley being a potential candidate for this head coaching job.
Yeah, and I put it out there on Twitter just hours ago, and people kind of flooded my mentions with theories. And I think the one that makes the most sense is like, well, if you're bringing in Brandon Staley, who's never been a GM, never been an assistant GM, do you trust him with not a lot of experience with a head coach with not a lot of experience? I mean, Staley's been a coordinator for a year. Mm-hmm. I believe in him fully in terms of X's and O's, but you and me both know, like, part of this job description is leader. And I don't know if Brandon Staley has proved himself as that. And to have two inexperienced people at those positions when they've said specifically they want experienced people, it's a risk. It's one that I'd probably be worth I'd probably think is it worth taking, but I'm not as I don't put as much value on experiences as clearly these guys do. And I understand their point of view there. Like, we just got, I mean, it would almost completely mirror what the Lions did with Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia, in that they got a coordinator who, yeah, he had that position for a while, but how much in charge was he really of that defense? And then you get a GM who's not even like the 1B to the 1A necessarily in Los Angeles, or in Detroit's case, New England. So it would come with a fair amount of risk that this team is probably not willing to put up, given what just happened. But I think Brandon Staley is the next great defensive mind, and this team, I mean, Lord knows they could use an actual great defensive mind rather than a guy riding off some coattails.
Oh yeah, 100%. Can I float one conspiracy theory by you?
Please.
What if Ed Dodds is interviewing just to gauge the Lions' interest in what they want to do with Matthew Stafford?
They're just asking big GM guys, candidates, like, hey, what do you think we should do with Stafford? Like, that's all they're doing? That's why they interviewed 12 guys?
No, Dodds is doing some espionage.
Oh, Dodds.
For the Colts.
Okay,
he's trying to figure out what the Lions want to do with Stafford to see if he's available for the Colts.
That would be some maniacal moves. I mean, maybe. You never know. I mean, I would say definitely not if the Colts were in the playoffs, but since they're not anymore, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I would want to hire Ed Dodds on the spot if trying to do something like that.
Yeah, like if you got the sense during the interview that that's the only reason he took the interview, you might just offer him the job on the spot anyways. He'll probably say no, but
you are willing to go to great lengths, my friend.
Before we close this out, there's not a lot really new with the head coaching search other than the fact that Todd Bowles will be interviewing on Friday. It doesn't seem like they've necessarily dug their heels in with any specific candidate. There hasn't been any second interviews. They're probably waiting to finish off this first round. Let me just ask you, since really the only news we've heard on this front is that Robert Saleh is with the Jets as we speak. Their interest seems very severe. I don't know. That's very big. They have very big interest. That's how you say words. And I guess my question to you is just how bummed will you be if Saleh's not the guy in Detroit?
If Saleh isn't the guy in Detroit, I don't think I would be so torn up about it. I think I would be. It's dependent upon who they hire, right? Yeah. Like if it's not Saleh, but it's Darrell Bevell, I don't know.
Yeah. If
it's not Saleh, but it's Marvin Lewis, I'm a little bit warmer to that.
Okay.
I think one of the biggest points from our first segment with Zach Keefer, and he just seemed like he was so kind of wrapped up in this, like what kind of interview process are they having to go through in Detroit, because they're looking for both GM and head coach at the same time. Like, there's so many moving parts that, like, I don't know if I can make a decision about who the Lions hire as head coach without thinking about, well, who did they get as GM? Like, it seems like they're inextricably linked. And we use that term so many times talking about Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia,
yeah,
that it's kind of like it's ingrained in my brain. But at the same time, another interesting point that Keefer brought up was, the Colts had a toxic relationship with Pagano and I'm blanking on the name of their general manager, to the point where they were going to therapy together.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to figure this out, and you got to get it right now. Like, you can't mess this up, or otherwise the Lions might be doing another one of these searches, 2 years from now.
That's a scary thought. And with that, I think we're just going to end it there. If this is the first time of listening to our podcast or one of these profiles, we've done a bunch already. Let me run through the guys that we've already talked about. And if you haven't listened to any of these, I highly suggest you go back and listen to. We've talked about Marvin Lewis. We've talked about George Payton. You probably don't care about that one too much anymore. We've talked about Brad Holmes. We've talked about who else? I feel like I'm missing a couple. Am I not? Is that it? Maybe that's it.
No, we've done more than that. Oh no.
We've done Robert Saleh. We had a great interview with Matt Mayoko. Maybe that's it. Either way, go through our podcast feeds. You can catch them on YouTube. You can catch them on Twitch. You can catch them on your favorite podcast feeds. We're all up there. Make sure you just search for the Pride of Detroit podcast. Don't search PODcast because that's going to not limit your search at all. But until then, thank you for joining us today or tonight, whenever you're listening. I want to thank, again, Zach Keefer for joining us to give us the full breakdown on Ed Dodds. And until next time, y'all, it's chaos. Be kind.
Call recording off.
All right, chat.
I know that we did more.
I know we did too. Who did we miss, chat?
We did Rick Smith with Aaron Wilson.
That's right.
We did Dimitrov and kind of Pioli with Orlando Ledbetter.
Dang it. Why did I forget all the chat? You were slacking, chat. I blame it on you completely.
I was like, there's no way we've only done like 3 of these.
I know. Yeah. I didn't go back. Nah, it's fine. But we did not do one on Rick. I don't even know who we'd get if we wanted to talk about Riddick. But I mean, he at this point it doesn't seem like he's a finalist. So
yeah,
can you get an oh yeah? Oh yeah. Is that what they're looking for?
I think the cool thing about our next podcast is that we'll be able to check off 3 people in one podcast.
Yeah, I already put out one feeler. Haven't gotten a response for someone from Saints, but yeah, we got to get someone from Saints. I think probably our focus should be on Dan Campbell, but at the same time, like 2 GM candidates, finalists coming from there, so we'll probably split the discussion there. We'll have to find someone that's willing to talk for a full half an hour, maybe even more than that, so that we can cover everything. But is Dimitrov going to get hired? I don't know. It's gone a little cold there, right? He seemed like at the very beginning of the search to be the favorite, and I think that's even what Aaron Wilson told us at the beginning. Rick Smith is another name that I'm surprised has gone cold. He was one of my favorite candidates, and yeah, I don't know. Can you?
I feel like his name has been mentioned with other teams. I thought Rick Smith was a finalist for another team,
the Falcons. But at the same time, and that was from the get go. Like Rick Smith, again, I think it was Aaron Wilson told us like that's probably Rick Smith's job to lose. But it kind of seems like he might be losing it. I don't know. See you in 4 hours for the GM signing emergency podcast. Who knows? Maybe this one never even sees the day of light in terms of on our podcast feed. You never know. Things do seem like they're probably going to pick up quick. But again, and we didn't even bring this up, and maybe we should have on the podcast. When it comes to the Saints guys, Lions can't interview them right now. Lions can't interview Fontana. They can't interview Ireland because they're in the playoffs and they're there in the building, and so they have to wait for either them to get kicked or the week between the conference championship and the Super Bowl. And so if they are seriously considering those guys or if Dodds was their guy or Brad Holmes is their guy and they swing and miss on one of those guys or if Colbert comes back into the picture, maybe they hire one of those guys and forget those other 2 candidates. But we could see this stretch out another couple weeks, which is not something I personally want to see. It also might mean they nab a head coach first, and that could complicate things obviously as well. But we'll see. I guess that does mean we have a little bit of a time for a Saints guest, although not if they necessarily hire someone before then. But they're not going to hire anyone from the Saints right away, so we could get someone in there. And if you guys have any suggestions, like I said, I only sent out one feeler so far. If there's a Saints writer that you guys like, let me know. Just tweet at me or something.
Who is the old Lions beat writer that went to the Saints?
He's not there anymore, but oh God, what's his name? Why do I feel
I'm
bad?
blanking on his name.
Chat should know. Yeah, no, I remember I had a conversation with Justin Rogers about him because he always seemed like a really interesting guy, and yeah, he said like he just kind of got sick of the beat after a while with the Saints, but he's from New Orleans.
Josh Katzenstein.
Katzenstein, that's right. Who did you get for first bite this year? You want me to name everybody? Oh, there we go. Scott Warhite. Oh, over on YouTube, buddy. Appreciate you stopping by to watch. Oh, yeah, I did have a troll tweet about Ebron and Colbert. Oh, to preview the Saints game, we could get God, who we get?
Maddie Hudak.
Oh, that's right. We could potentially bring her in. That's a good reminder. Thank you. All right. I think we're ready to close things up, y'all. Thanks for joining on a midday podcast. Like I said, that's kind of crazy how many people viewed it. You know, obviously things are exciting right now, so I guess I get it. You guys are waiting for the latest news. Who does Campbell best pair with? I mean, probably someone from the Saints organization, right? But like we said, like we mentioned in the podcast, he does have a connection to Dodds, and so, you know, Dodds either can vouch for him or the opposite. We'll see. But I guess they've already seen.
It's like we're trying to pick a wine for our meal that we just
Right.
cooked. What does Campbell best pair with?
Who's like the red wine? Who's the steak? Who's the fish in this equation?
How is your steak done?
Well, I mean that doesn't matter with the pairing. It's always just medium rare, and I'll fight anyone in chat who thinks otherwise. Best soup? Is soup and wine a thing? I don't think soup and wine is a thing.
I don't think so. And are we just saying that because of Campbell?
Oh,
Campbell's
maybe. Is that what you're doing? Holmes is a well done sirloin. Oh, ouch! Oof.
Ouch!
The karma. Not a fan of Brad Holmes.
Or, you know, maybe that's just how they prefer their steak done.
But I don't know. Sirloin too? I don't know. Sirloin's not a great cut either. Dodds and Sala is my steak and lobster. I think a lot of people would love that one.
I think so too.
Rare is greater than all other levels of cook. Listen, I'll eat a rare steak any day of the week, but I usually order medium rare so I don't get looks from the people I'm eating with. At home, give me rare. I don't care.
Real quick in the
Rare, don't
chat,
care.
what if it's Bevel and Dodds? Because to me, it seems like Dodds is a nice cab, and Daryl Bevel would be Easy Mac.
Fish sticks. Yeah, let me hear it. Dodds. I like this. If Dodds was the candidate with Bevel, what food combination is that for you guys? We need these. These are the important questions that need to be answered.
It's too bad we don't have Zach Keefer back on the podcast to discuss this.
Daryl Bevel is the mozzarella sticks of this coaching search. Yeah, you're right, Warwick. Got it. Steak and instant mashed potatoes. Steak and Kraft mac and cheese. You guys, but I guess we all. You're not doing the wine and meal combo here. You're just doing, I guess, entree and an appetizer. Beef jerky and Twinkie.
I do like how Bevel is being relegated to being a side dish in those entree combinations, though.
You'd like putting ketchup on your steak.
Now he's been reduced to a condiment. This is getting really bleak for Daryl Bevel.
Dodds and Bevel's like topping a steak with flaming hot Cheetos. Yeah, the Cheetos are a good snack for a bit, but not for every meal. Pinot Noir and beef flavored ramen.
That's really sad. That's a really sad meal. I think mozzarella sticks is a really good comparison, and the reason I say that is because even Jeremy and I were just of the belief that like mozzarella sticks, they're fine, but there's so many better choices you can make.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the way I put it on Twitter is like, listen, I highly doubt the best candidate for the job just so happens to be in the team's backyard right now. That seems highly unlikely, but I'm willing to give him a shot if he's the guy.
Considering they're doing all of these interviews, right? Like if the best guy was already in house, like
it's sus, as the kids say.
Yeah,
it's sus. Bevel is oatmeal. Dobbs is waffle with amazing syrup. Joey asks, what's your opinion on Holmes? Ryan and I actually just finished a good discussion of that about 20 minutes ago or so. I would suggest rewinding and checking it out. I don't want to rehash it. He's got a little more reservations than I do. I think he'd be a fantastic hire. The only questions I guess would be, you know, one, who he would like as a head coach, and would he be able to pair well with said head coach, and then two, why? I mean, he doesn't have experience, right? Like, so then maybe you have to go a Marvin Lewis type of hire and get someone experienced in the building. And then if you're pairing Marvin Lewis with a young up-and-comer, how's that dynamic going to work? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's all I got, and I think that's all we got, chat. We're going to close it there. Thanks again for joining us in the middle of the day podcast. We'll try to maybe fit in a Saints one this week. We'll see. If not, be sure to tune in. I think we're going to move to Monday nights in general because we don't want to overlap with playoffs. And in general, I think during the offseason, we normally go Monday nights for a podcast. So join us live, YouTube, Twitch for that. Maybe some fun stuff in between then. We'll see. But appreciate y'all joining us. We'll see you soon. I'm looking in the wrong